It's a new year and I'm ready to start my January reads. And I thought, why not start it off by testing Goodreads and seeing, do my opinions match with what Goodreads say? I would argue probably not. First off, reading's subjective. There's genres you're not going to like. There are tropes that just personally you don't like. I found that last year quite a bit. So obviously the ratings aren't always a good way to see if you like a book or not. But I do still like seeing whether my opinions are popular or unpopular. I would also argue though that there is a pretty big flaw with Goodreads, and that's the fact that we don't have half stars. And I think that makes a huge difference between a 3 and a 3.5, and definitely a 4 to a 4.5. I can only imagine we're not going to get it because we'd probably crash the system while trying to run and change our ratings. So I think there's already some discrepancy with Goodreads. However, I want to take it to the test. I'm going to read my highest rated review and my lowest rated review on Goodreads for my January TBR and see how they match up to each other, but also how my ratings match up with Goodreads. So our highest rated is going to be The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier Clay by Michael Chabon. This one got on my radar because it was on the 100 Books of the Century list. This is about Joe Cavalier. He escapes Nazi-occupied Prague to come to the United States. He looks for his cousin Sammy, and together they start in the comic book industry. All the rave in America at this time. I'm super interested in this, mostly because how comic books were used in this time is super interesting. It wasn't just entertainment. If you can see Superman, he fought all kinds of villains. The same villains that America was fighting at the same time. You had him fighting Hitler. You had him fighting Mussolini. You also, in the TV show and on the radio, had him fighting the Klan. In fact, really interesting history if you want to look it up. Look up how Superman defeated the KKK. Basically, they helped an insider get into the Klan and then release all the people's information. Turns out it's not so cool to be a part of that if everyone knows who you are. Highly recommend looking that up, and I'm very interested to see what their comic books are like and what they're doing with theirs. Are they publishing their ideologies? Are they fighting communism? Are they doing it as propaganda? Very interested to find out. I do hope it focused mostly on the industry and less on character development. Of course, I still want a lot of character development, but I'm really looking forward to seeing about the comic book industry during the golden age of it in America. That happens to be our highest rated one of our January TBR, and that one has a 4.19 rating. And I'm going to guess that I'm going to have about the same rating. I'm expecting this to be a 4 or a 5 star, so hopefully we start this year off with a win. Could really use that after my last December reads. Our lowest score is going to be Lapvonia. This is by Otessa Mosfeg. And as our lowest rating, it only has a 3.56. I will say I think that's still an okay rating. I have liked books with lower ratings, and I've liked books quite a bit that are around the same. So I'm not giving up hope just because of that low score. I've also read from this author before. She wrote the Year of Rest and Relaxation, and I read that last year. I gave it a 3.5, so this could be something I like. Also, when I was looking for the Goodreads rating, I just realized that this is a horror. Horror is one of my favorite genres, so I'm even more excited for this. This was also recommended to me by a friend. Now, let's see what it's about. What I gathered from this back is that it's about a little boy named Mark whose mother has died. He's motherless, he's the son of the shepherd, and he makes friends with the blind midwife, Ina. Ina has this unnatural communication with nature, and the town isn't quite a fan of this. In particular, it's a priest and a governor who don't like this at all, and they're going to test the town because of what's going on. When Mark gets involved, occult forces raise up against the old order. Now, that's just kind of what I got from this. I will say the back sounds batshit crazy, and I kind of expect that from Otessa. Year of Relaxation was a weird read, so I'm just expecting all her books to be pretty weird. I'm also expecting to hate the characters, because I hated all the characters in the last one. However, that doesn't mean I won't like the book. Sometimes it's fun to hate everyone and see what happens. So my guess for this book is that I'm going to disagree with Goodreads because I see this only going two ways. I either love it or I hate it. I don't see this being an in-between book just based on how polarizing all the reviews are. Those are my first reads for January, and I'm really hoping we don't start this reading year off with a bummer. I am going to be off to Mexico for a week, so these are going to be the books that I bring with me, hoping to come back with some great reviews and hopefully a little bit more sun. Well, I'm back from Mexico, though to be honest, it's been another full week of me trying to finish these books. So in the end, it took me 2 weeks. It might have been a little bit ambitious to try to finish such a big book in just 1 week, but I also just think it was because I didn't enjoy these. These were pretty awful, pretty tedious to get through. This one, especially. The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier Clay, I think, is a pretty hyperbolic title because all I can describe this book is boring. Now, again, this is a subjective opinion. It has great reviews. It's won so many awards, but this truly was so tedious for me to get through. It was a 1 star. Honestly, if I wasn't trapped on a plane for the majority of this book, I would have DNF'd it. So why did I not like it? Well, the one thing, as I told you before, I was really excited about was to learn about the comic book industry of that time. Do I feel like I achieved that with this book? No. That was a pretty small part in my opinion, and for a lot of it, it's just kind of completely abandoned. They're not even a part of the comic book industry. They're not writing them. You hear nothing about it. It's mentioned here or there, but it's pretty much forgotten. So that was pretty disappointing for me. I think it also could have been cool if this was mixed media, so the parts that they were describing the comic books, if you had pictures, I think that would have been really cool. Just having it kind of written out isn't as impactful, so even the parts I did get about the comic books, I found pretty boring. Then when I did like something, like for example, I really liked Joe, one of our main characters. I liked kind of his struggle with survivor guilt. He's over here in America, he's experiencing great success, but at the same time, he has a family that's stuck in this horrible situation during World War II, and he's trying to figure out how he can go on and also help his family and get information about his family, and that was an interesting aspect of the book. Unfortunately, you just don't get his perspective very often, and again, it's just super drawn out with kind of other filler stuff jammed in there that just wasn't as interesting. Even Sam, his cousin, who helps him write these amazing comic books, his storyline is kind of forgotten at points in the story. A lot of his story is supposed to be his struggle with his sexuality during this time. Again, it could have been really interesting, but you don't really get it that often. Instead, it's just a lot of filler of events and references of this time period. I felt like the author was just trying to say, hey, look how much I know about this time frame. And personally for me, I just hate books that either info dump or make too many references, especially if you don't know them. And even if you do, I just think it ages a book and it's not really enjoyable to read. So I hate when contemporary books do it, and I hate when historical fiction books do it. If it's not important to the actual plot and pacing of the book, I don't think you have to put it in, is my opinion. And I just think this does it way too much for my liking. Also, the writing style is just simply not for me. Again, another subjective thing, but the prose are too flowery, they're over-descriptive. I thought this book was really bloated, and I think it could have been shorter and much more impactful. Another aspect of this book that just didn't personally work for me is there's this magic element. So Joe likes comic books, but he also started off with magic. He likes card tricks and kind of those Houdini tricks. So there's a pretty big emphasis on that as well. And it turns out that's just not something I'm interested in. So I just felt like I didn't get what I wanted out of this book, and the actual reading experience was just really, really hard. I didn't want to pick it up at all. I ended up giving this a 1 star, which some people might think is harsh, but I honestly just rate books based on how I like them. So a subjective rating. I'm sure other people will say they thought the writing was great, that it was amazing. It's won a lot of awards, but I wouldn't recommend it. Just goes to show you that you can't always rely on Goodreads. I honestly probably should have just read a few more chapters before I committed to it, because I knew pretty early on that this writing style was just not for me. But at least I know now. There was another book of his that was on my radar, and I'm just not going to pick it up anymore. Next up is Latvonia. This one I believe I said I would either love or hate, and it was neither. It was pretty middle of the road for me. I ended up giving it 3 stars, much like I did her last book as well. This one is definitely a lot weirder and more vile than her last one, but I did enjoy the themes of this book. So the major theme here is just kind of power balance. Merc goes from the lower class all the way to the higher class with some very weird circumstances. And you just see how the powerful, the governor and the priest, use the poor to enrich their lives and convince the poor that their suffering is for the greater good and that they're trying to help them ascend to a more godly place, is basically the whole message of this book. And I actually quite enjoyed that. And even some of the tougher subject matters, I think, added to the book. There's cannibalism and things like that. However, the part that really got me was probably the men breastfeeding on a witch. That just, even though I get how it's part of the plot and it's necessary, I just made for a really unenjoyable reading experience for me. So even though this is a 3 and it had enjoyable themes, I wouldn't recommend it. It's pretty hard to read, to be honest. I think for myself, I enjoy her writing, but I clearly just don't enjoy her storytelling. So I think that will be the last time I pick her up, at least for a while. If there's another book by her you think I would like better, please let me know. But I just don't like those super shocking elements unless they really add to a really strong story. And I just don't feel like either or 2 stories had that. I'd actually almost preferred if I hated it, because I would have more to say, but honestly it was just kind of like, okay, good themes, hard to read, it was all right. I'm hoping my next reads will be a lot better. I think what I'm going to do, since these first 2 didn't go well, is I'm just going to read some of my favorite authors or favorite books and hope this turns around. I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you on the next one.